even in this worst, we have the lowest growth in 10 years. We're still the third fastest growing country in the world. So we do need to recognize there is a problem going on around the world.
Sure.
And we are linked to the global economy, whether we like it, accept it or not. That's a reality now. Under the circumstances, I think he has done a very intelligent job of balancing two things. One was fiscal deficit had to be reined in. We didn't really have an option. Our back is to the wall.
Okay.
So whether for compulsion or whatever, he has done what needed to be done. I would have also preferred if he had cut down non-planned rather than planned expenditure. Nevertheless, he has done what he has. Still brought it down to 5.2 to avoid any downgrade from the global rating agencies, which would have hurt everybody, by the way. It would hurt us for the next 4 or 5 years if we get downgraded today.
Yes.
At the same time, he has made steps to try and bring some growth and savings back and money into infrastructure, which are all sorely required.
Sure.
So, in the balance, I would say it is more good than not in this budget. Not everything is good, and certainly not everything is bad. So I think industry is celebrating for two reasons. I don't think industry is going and shouting it's a fantastic budget. They're saying under the circumstances, it's a good budget. One was the expectation which has got built about all kinds of new duties and taxes coming in, excise getting raised, estate duty coming in. There is some relief that those did not, because in this situation, if you do anything which would make people more nervous, it actually would have disrupted any kind of growth coming back.
Mike, therefore now we go to the center of the panel, and all eyes are on you, Mr. Tiwari. You have got the drift of the argument. Are you making a virtue of a necessity? This, pragmatism or not going over the top or not being unduly populist. Are you making too much of a virtue of what is your compelling necessity?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody is making a virtue out of a situation. After all, every economy operates in a given situation. And let's not forget the fact, notwithstanding whatever the doomsayers have been saying, that the UPA government during the 11th plan period delivered a consistent growth rate of 8%, and which has been more than any plan period in the past. Now, you had a situation whereby the finance minister had to balance a current account deficit, which was spiraling out of control. There were inflationary pressures in the economy, and of course, there was the problem of the fiscal deficit. Now, under these circumstances, what is the choice that he made? And the choice that he made was that in the last year, before we head into 2014, I am not going to succumb to the temptation of populism. Because good economics makes good politics. I will keep the economy on the track. And I'm quite surprised, criticism from the left and the right is understandable. But from my friend, Mr. Dinesh Trivedi, who was a reformist himself in last year.
My complaint, my complaint, my complaint is that he has not done reform. My complaint is that he has not done enough reform. That is what my complaint is. If you give me time and proof, he has not done any reform. That's what my complaint is. That's what my complaint is. That he had an opportunity to do the reform, but he has not done any reform which would have generated a lot of employment, which I did in the railway.
One line. Here's my witticism as far as Dinesh ji is concerned. When you lose your wheels, you get stuck.
He couldn't resist that. The wiser Goswami couldn't resist that.
But he's got his wit all about.
May I also add to that? However fascinating a subject of discussion Mr. Dinesh Trivedi is, I request you, Mr. Manish Tiwari, not to derail your own argument. Go back to the issue. You are making a virtue of a necessity.
I am not derailing an argument.
Go ahead.
All that I was very respectfully trying to point out to this very eminent panel is that, look, there was a situation, and howsoever you might like to believe that the situation was created by the UPA, or we live in some kind of isolation that we are a DPR Korea which is disconnected from the world, that is not the situation. If you read the second paragraph of the finance minister's speech, he says 108% of flows in and out of the economy are interconnected to the global world. So therefore, that is the reality that you live in. Yes, there was also the imperative of global investment agencies. They look very closely at India. They look at they look at your fiscal deficit numbers. Your current account deficit has to be financed out of your exports, because that is something which does not come out of internal generation.
So 3 years back, 4 years back.
You see, I think the message which the finance minister has set out to the country, or the UPS sent out, is that good economics makes good politics, and therefore we've decided to steer the course.
There are two parts of the debate now. One way, gentlemen, it's very. So many good minds together. I allow one at a time. There are two parts. I want the consensus of the panel. The first part of the debate is what got us here. The second part of the debate is how do we get out of here. I want the consensus of this panel. I go by your judgment. Should we debate what got us here? How do we get out of here?
Both are equally linked, because to get out of here, you need to change the things which got us over here.
Fine. So therefore,
to get out of here, Mr. Manish Tiwari, the question really is that the reforms that he's spoken about, they're only spoken about.
What reform?
May I please ask the question?
No reform is
May I please ask the question?
Allow her, Mr. Trivedi.
The reforms that he's spoken about are only spoken about in the budget. He's talked about the decision-making process in the Cabinet Committee of Investment. That is where most of the decisions of this government are pending. There are pipeline projects running into lakhs of crores, all pending there. There's no outside agency which can speed that up. It's the government which has to do it. He's talked about the big reform on the oil and gas pricing, where you're moving from a profit sharing to a revenue sharing model. That's again a statement of intent. There's nothing on the ground for it. He's talked about the GST rollout, which is something that has been talked of ad nauseum from the NDA years. But there is, despite the pronouncement in the budget, there's no provision that has been made in terms of money that can be compensated to states to take this process forward. So 3 reform issues. The issue is that the entire reform process is stuck at the doorstep of the government's decision making. How are you going to resolve that? Because that can't be resolved in the budget speech. It has to be resolved outside.
Well, I think, Navika, notwithstanding the fact that you asked this question to 2 of my colleagues in cabinet, an hour back and half an hour before that, you still don't seem to be convinced by the answers. So therefore, let me reiterate and let me try and encapsulate what they tried to convey. And that is, insofar as the Cabinet Committee on Investments is concerned, it's looked at some of these pending projects. There has been progress insofar as the oil and gas sector is concerned. On the power sector side, there are things which have been resolved in order to expedite power projects which had been stuck because of environmental reasons and other reasons. So therefore, there has been progress in that direction. Even in terms of price pooling, there has been significant movement forward. So, and about the GST, in this budget itself, if I remember correctly from the top of my head, the finance minister towards the end of his speech said that he's made a provision of 9,000 crores, in order to recompense the state so that we can move towards the GST. So therefore, what I'm trying to say is that yes, there have been difficulties because different ministries administer legislative remits which are handed down by Parliament. So therefore, you have to reconcile them. So you have to reconcile them, and you have to see as to how you can get it moving. And on critical issues of oil and gas and power, there has been forward movement in the last month. And since I sit on the Cabinet Committee on Investment, I can say that with authority.
Navika is right. There is no provision for GST.
You mean to say she's usually wrong? Is that the insinuation?
There is no provision for GST. Navika, his argument. The provision is the first decisive step by setting apart 9,000 crores towards the first installment of the balance of CST compensation. It's an old compensation, nothing for GST.
The fact has not been
CST compensation was the outstanding issue insofar as clinching the GST negotiations were concerned. So therefore, if the finance minister...
is not going to be implemented this year.
My dear friend, your finance ministers, the finance minister, the deputy chief minister of Bihar, Mr. Sushil Modi, who comes from your party, had insisted in the empowered group of finance ministers that the issue of outstanding CST should be settled. And the finance minister has taken the first step forward. He's made a provision for that in the budget. Now you walk the talk.
GST provision. I'm just correcting your perception.
Now you walk the talk and come on board and let's get the GST implemented.
It's the first installment. There has to be more installments, and GST provision will be in the future.
Incrementally, he's taken the
GST
first
is not happening in this year, is what the budget says.
On this,
See, from
Piyush, as a neutral guy, neither party, nothing. Piyush is 100% right. The provision is to take care of past liabilities. Once the provision is taken care, then we can go ahead with GST. It does not mean the GST will happen in fiscal 2013.
Gentlemen, in fact, if you go back to the previous budget, the IT network, there was a proposal in the previous budget.
GST.
In order to put the GST IT network in place, a lot of work has been done in that regard. But the point I was trying to make, the limited point on GST is that the sticking point was CST compensation. And the finance minister has addressed that.
Do we want to discuss the bigger picture? Can we discuss the bigger picture?
There's an issue here, by the way.
Let's not go back.
Piyush,
The ITN network, even the rollout, work has not started.
There is an issue.
Let's get everyone in. I want to go to Mr. Munjal, please, and then I'm coming around the table, please.
There is an issue which is bothersome, that GST has become a political football.
That's true.
This is something you need all of the parties to pull together in one direction. Everybody acknowledges this will help the country, it will help the economy, it will help job creation, it will grow the GDP by 1.5% to 2% and bring business which is being done outside of the system into the system. There is a disincentive to do business without invoicing if you're on GST. Why would there be opposition? I don't even understand this. And this debate has been going on and on for now 4 years now. It was supposed to have been implemented in 2010. So,
you asked the BJP because the chief of the empowered group of ministers is I think the BJP deputy chief minister of Bihar. The onus is on your side.
I'm in the standing committee of finance. We have asked questions of the government to which we still don't have answers. The constitutional amendment bill itself is stuck for want of answers.
The insinuation.
So we are not to be blamed. The government has to
but it's a fact.
Gentlemen, the question is, there is a political football on it, okay? Now,
how do you say that? I'm saying we are waiting for response.
Allow me. Just a minute. You see, the point is very simply this. Let's not go into specific into GST. There is political football. 1 minute, Piyush. Allow me.
Specifics that don't make allegations.
Allow me. I'm not making an allegation. There is a divergence between your view and that of your Bihar Deputy Chief Minister, and we can argue till heavens come, but we are not going to do that. My question on a broader point is, since we debated, we were limited time, with 2 things to debate. What got us here and how do we get out of it?
Arnab, I want to be on a bigger picture.
No, I want to discuss what got us here, because when the Manmohan Singh government took charge, it was over 8%. Today we are at this state. You know, whatever you may say, the fact is that there is some element of responsibility that the government will have to take. I want Lord Desai to come in on that, to give us the bigger picture on that, and then I'm coming to you, Lord Desai.